And it is just about 7 o'clock, a few minutes after maybe, but maybe we should get started right away. And I'm sure more people will be joining us. But tonight's Detroit Solar Story is part 2 of the continuation of the amazing story of how Detroit goes solar. And last month we had the opportunity to hear from Tricia Stein, who's the mayor's strategic planning right-hand person and on top of everything in the city. So I was thrilled that she could come and join us last week. She was instrumental in really working this through on how this whole amazing process of how Detroit would go solar. And really, this is where conversations get started and you don't know where they'll go. But she and I have been talking about this for some time, and my goodness, it's really going to happen. So I'm thrilled that tonight we have the opportunity for part 2 to talk about a really exciting opportunity. And again, Detroit to be, I don't want to use the word unique, but to have this great opportunity to put the vacant land to the highest advantage possible. So the whole role of how food production, agrivoltaics, whether it's food production or just vegetation, will have great benefits to the city of Detroit. So I'm going to go through quickly with the slides, which I tried to show last time, but we're going to do it this time. To see how Detroit is going to go solar. So a few years back, these were the kinds of the headlines that we were looking at a few years back was how every other city was had started to join the revolution, and Detroit was sadly behind. And now finally, we're at this very exciting point where we can show the headlines that Detroit has joined the revolution. So there are quite a few benefits from this program, and we talked about it last month as well. But number one, this will help meet the greenhouse gas emissions plan that the city has put forth and city council has endorsed, and it is to reduce our CO2 emissions over the next several years to 50%. But key to that is running the entire municipality on clean energy. And when going through this whole program, we were able to show that there would be public health improvements from cleaner air of about $14 million. And this was part of this convincing city council that this really innovative idea was something that was worth it to all citizens in Detroit, not just the ones in the immediate neighborhoods that were going to be getting the solar. There were many, many more benefits, but those are the key ones that we want to focus on. For years, we've been reporting to City Council every year with our Green Task Force and our Renewable Energy Committee that Detroit was a solar beginner, and about 63, 62 out of 67 major cities. With this new plan, Detroit will shoot up to a solar star and now be in the middle of the pack. So that's an incredible projection from where we were just a few years ago, and actually where we still are right now. Right now, we have about 8 megawatts in the city. We'll be going up to having 65.5 watts per person for a total of 42 megawatts. So we talked last week about how there were 8, or last month, how there were 8 or 9 proposals that went to the city that were viable and accepted by the city, where they had to be at least 40 acres in size. They had to have certain conditions, the main one being that the neighborhood supported it. In some neighborhoods where people had too many questions or too many doubts, if they could not get that full support from the neighborhood, then the application wouldn't go forward. So there were 8, 9 actually, down to 8 that were acceptable, and the 3 most or the highest potential to begin immediately are these 3 neighborhoods that you see here. I did a little better on the map this time from last month, so you can actually see the ones that are numbered 1, 2, and 3 are the ones that are going to be in this first phase. And as we discussed last time, there are 2 developers that were selected, Lightstar and DTE. Very different contracts, very different proposals. Lightstar will have the number 2 and the number 3 sites in this first round this year, and next year DTE will have 2 of the 3 sites and Lightstar will have the third. The community design discussions have started. We were there last night, and Owen, I believe you've already had 1 or 2 as well. So tonight we're going to talk about that other part of the proposal that is so innovative for Detroit, and that is to have agrivoltaics as part of the project. And this is where we have 40-acre sites, plenty of room to put in many more benefits with using that land wisely. And we're really excited to see that photo or agrivoltaics can be part of this plan. So T, do you want to load up?
Yep, that'd be great.
And welcome.
Thank you. Thanks
So
for having me.
Again, we had T here last spring when she was newly appointed as the sustainability director and suddenly had so much on her hands and was so generous to share her time with us with how she was working through all these proposals and how it was worked. So I think she's had a little bit more time to understand how this is all going to be working with our neighborhoods. And now that we have the 2 developers finally selected, even more work to do. But we're thrilled to have Tepfira Rushdan here. And also Owen Deitcher, who is our representative from Lightstar Renewables, who is out of Boston, but visiting here in, or no, not Boston?
I'm out of Philly.
Oh, out of Philly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our company is based in Boston, so. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. I'm in Detroit. It's like my second home at this point, so.
Okay. Well, we're happy to have you as an honorary Detroiter in our community here. Okay, so T.
All right, thank you. And I am going to stay off camera just because I think I have limited internet and I want to make sure we get through the PowerPoint here.
Okay.
But yeah. So Diane prepped as well. We have gotten since I've last talked to you, and I think you guys talked to Trisha last week. So you guys know these are our finalist areas with the kind of approximate land acreage here that you can see. From the very beginning of this project, community engagement has been at the forefront. In fact, B2 has been instrumental as a neighborhood solar partner, but we've had 60 plus meetings with these neighborhoods. So we're very well acquainted with the neighbors. We're talking to them all the time. And we're just starting this process here now. Since this has been passed, our next steps are to sit down with the neighbors and really have them visualize what they want to see on the perimeter of the solar fields. And so we said all along that people have access for renderings and drawings and what's going to happen. But we wanted to leave it up to the neighbors who will be living it in these neighborhoods and seeing these solar fields, what they want to see. So our planning department came on board, really giving a presentation around 3 different facets, and I'll share a little bit more there. But I just wanted to show you kind of our next steps. So we've decided to do 3 design meetings in each neighborhood. The first of them happened this week, so this week was a little bit hectic for me. Me and Diane were just at Van Dyke Lynch last night. Monday we had one in Gratiot Finley, and next Monday we'll be out in State Fair. In a few more weeks, beginning of October, we're going to do a second meeting where the preferences that they've indicated at this first meeting, they'll be able to see what they look like a little bit more and refine our vision for the neighborhood. And we'll also get into some of those energy efficiency upgrades and talking to the community about what that really looks like now that we're at this point. And the last meeting, they'll actually vote on the design. So yep, so that's us out in the neighborhoods. And this to advance. Here we go. There we go. So you know, a part of the contracts that we have with two developers that joined us for this ride is that the developers need to come to a community agreement around these principles that we just talked about. So the four kind of things that we're looking at is, what is the fencing going to look like? Neighbors are choosing those designs. What are the landscape going to look like? What is the vegetation looks like, both under the solar panels and around the solar panels, and how do we see the lighting happening? And so this is where Lightstar immediately stood out from the rest of the developers that apply for this. They have a history with agrivoltaics, and you know, we as a city are known for urban farming, so it was kind of a perfect mix for us, and we were really excited about this possibility. Of course, this is something that the neighbors will have to select, and so we're talking that through in terms of what they'd like to see under the panels, whether it's actual food production, whether it's wildflowers, whether it's all kind of variety of things that it could be. So I'm going to turn it over to Owen, who's done some of these projects. Owen, just tell me if you want to fast forward. These are some of the slides that Owen shared at council, so I just primed them up for you.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for having me. I'm Owen Deitcher. I'm a development associate at Lightstar, but I also focus internally on promoting agrivoltaic solutions. So I'm kind of running point on trying to promote you know, whether it's crops or livestock, you know, different types of agricultural solutions across our company portfolio that we're being able to gear solutions to the local community. This is an image of kind of the founding kind of agrivoltaics kind of array within the United States. It's called Jack Solar Garden. It's based in Longmont, Colorado. If you have a chance when you visit Denver, I suggest going out and visiting there. They have tours on Saturdays. And it's a 1.3 or 1.2 megawatt site. I think it's 6 acres. So it's pretty small, but it showcases kind of what crop production, and also they have some grazing activities on it, what it can really mean for local communities as well. They've been able to gear CSAs to that site and provide kind of fruits and vegetables to kind of low-income communities and to schools in the nearby area. This is another array that I visited in Iowa State. It's kind of one of the first like commercially scaled out or spec'd out sites for a land grant university in the United States, and they're growing broccoli, strawberries. They're doing some honeybees as well too on a portion of the site, but they're really trying to be innovative in terms of kind of what's growing on the site and being able to study that and provide research. Move on to the next one. Yep, like I said, strawberry crop on this one. And yeah, they have a couple of different kind of row spacing, and some portion of the site is single axis tracker, which means it's following the sun. Some of the site is fixed tilt, so it's just stuck at particular angle. But this site is beautiful. I was able to go visit with Brianna Fiorillo, who's the policy manager for the Midwest, and we had a great time there. So. And yeah, so this is Plains Road. So this is an agrivoltaics array that we're building. It's under construction right now in New York State, in the Hudson Valley. It is a 4 megawatt site. It's going to have predominantly hay on it, but there's going to be a small portion of the property that's going to be used for about 2 acres could be for vegetable production. So we have the existing kind of farmer. It's the farming family that actually leases the land. It's going to be farming the hay. And then we're looking for a farmer, preferably someone that's going to be a first generation farmer, or an immigrant farmer as well too, that wants to have access to a small plot of land, 2 acres, to be able to do vegetable production. And we're also applying this site through a New York RFP to be able to do increased kind of training and educational opportunities, plus showcase what a small scale kind of vegetable plot would mean on potentially a larger scale agrivoltaic site. And yeah, and in terms of stormwater, what does it look like? I know when you have like an agricultural fields, what are the kind of questions that come up? It's like, is there going to be runoff? Is that going to be more or less than kind of traditional kind of solar facilities? What we found is that we are not running into stormwater issues when we're looking at agrivoltaic sites. We have a completed stormwater management plan for each one of our sites, regardless if it's agrivoltaics or not. And we have an increased level of detail when it comes to agricultural operations and making sure that we're staying in compliance. But our civil engineering partners are able to kind of work with the farming partner, understand kind of the grading on site so that we're not running into stormwater issues kind of later on. So yes, in terms of the kind of next steps, in terms of what we're doing right now. So T kind of kicked it off saying that we are, we are working on the neighborhood agreements right now. We're gonna have 2 more meetings. We're gonna have 2 more meetings. What some pictures show Road Road DC. Yes, that's a great question. So that picture of Iowa State, I'll just answer that right now before I forget. They have the DC wiring, the cables above ground. All of our sites, when it comes to agrivoltaics, we have our DC cables buried underneath the ground. So we have no interference from agricultural equipment, and that's never going to touch that. So we do trenching of all of our cables to ensure there's going to be no interference. But yeah, that's a great question. But yeah, for developers right now, we're going to finalize our neighborhood agreements after kind of talking with the community and kind of seeing what they wanted to see on site, including kind of what the setbacks are going to look like, the fencing on site, and also the green space management. And that also includes, and we've had very positive feedback on the Gratiot Finley community meeting that people want to see agrivoltaics. And so we're going to present a couple of different options to kind of see which one tickles their fancy, whether it's kind of community gardens or more large scale agricultural operation. We're going to kind of go to the community and present a couple of different options and pictures to see which one really sticks with them and they want to see. And then from there, we're going to do the kind of energy efficiency upgrades or community benefit process where we're going to do upgrades up to $25,000 in some neighborhoods for the homes in the neighborhood around the projects. And so those are going to take place. The assessments are going to start this fall to kind of understand kind of what upgrades are needed for those homes. And then the actual upgrades themselves will take place over the course of the winter and spring of 2025. And then real estate purchases, we're expecting to kind of start getting site control sometime in 2025 and starting to actually get the project kind of rolling. And then construction is going to take place later, probably end of summer, beginning of fall 2025. And we're expecting construction to complete in early 2026.
I actually have your construction timeline here at the next slide if you want to.
Okay, great. Yeah.
If you want to go a little bit more detail.
Yeah. So like I said before, like after we get site control and that's kind of on over to the left, talking about site prep and clearing the site. So we're going to get access and ownership over the land starting in January, February. And from there, we're going to do kind of clearing of the site, removing vegetation. All the structures are going to be removed by the city. And then additional kind of permitting interconnections, so being able to connect to the grid, completing that process. Any additional survey and environmental work, it needs to be complete before we can, break ground. But in terms of kind of the construction timeline, like I said, we're going to start end of summer and really start getting the site graded and fencing installed are kind of the first 2 items. And then it's really about kind of ordering and delivering kind of racking and modules so that we can get that installed. And racking arrives first, which that gets installed, and then modules arrive second, and those get installed afterwards. And then the final 2 months of the construction process, we're looking at kind of wiring, interconnection. So any additional upgrades on the feeders or all the infrastructure around the site that needs to be able to actually interconnect this project to the grid. Additional planting. So crops, whether that's ground cover, tree plantings that need to take place in the surrounding setbacks. That all gets done kind of in that 6 to 7 month range, from the start of construction, and then commissioning. So we're expecting by 2026 like Q1 2026 breaking or commissioning the project and then having an official ceremony with folks from around the state to be able to kind of introduce this project sometime in Q2. So that's kind of the timeline for construction. Very happy to kind of talk about any questions or any specifics surrounding construction to the best of my ability. So.
And that's pretty much all we had. We can end there. And if there's any questions regarding the project from myself, Diane, or Owen, I'm
Well,
happy
we
to.
have plenty of time for lots of questions.
Can
I
I make one comment? I
Sure.
forgot to introduce a really important person to this project, and he's actually on the call. Charles Gold from Michigan State University.
Oh, nice.
He is a really big supporter of agrivoltaics in the state of Michigan. We've met at a solar farm, New Jersey Solar Farm Summit last fall, and him and I were able to connect there, and have stayed in touch ever since then. Charles is retiring in 2026. Is that correct, Charles? And his
Yes,
last
it is.
hurrah is to be able to promote agrivoltaics in the state of Michigan. And so one of his kind of final, I'll let him kind of explain a little bit about what he's going to do. But he's going to be working with us and kind of collecting surveys and doing focus groups around the state of Michigan in urban and rural environments to understand what are the perceptions towards normal PV standard arrays compared to agrivoltaics arrays. For us, that's going to be really valuable information to be able to use and promote agrivoltaics in the state of Michigan. But also, I think in Detroit, it's going to be really great to be able to understand, what are the perceptions of people towards these projects if they don't have an agricultural element included in that. So I'll let Charles maybe explain a little bit about kind of what that project is and some of the work that he's doing, because he's been a really big supporter of this. And the fact that we have, we won the first two sites in the first phase and able to kind of bring agrivoltaics hopefully to these Detroit projects to be really impactful. So I'll let Charles kind of take it away with kind of some of his work.
Thank you, Owen. Charles, welcome. I don't know if you're familiar with Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association.
Oh, yes, I'm a member.
Bravo. Okay, so it's perfect circle. Thank you. Yeah, tell us your role and how you'll be here in Detroit.
Yeah, so I really don't have anything to add to what Owen said. I'm with Michigan State University Extension, and I am working with Michigan farmers who are wanting to grow crops or raise livestock in community or utility scale solar projects. So I'm working with Owen kind of in the background right now. I've got a 1,500 acre project here in Ottawa County that we're trying to get started. 9 landowners, and so just looking for opportunities. We have a group of sheep producers from southern Michigan, northern Indiana, northern Illinois now that have formed a nonprofit who are getting ramped up to be able to service large solar projects with sheep. The rule of thumb is 3 ewes per acre or 9 lambs per acre. And so these folks are getting themselves in a position where they can go into a solar project and be able to graze. And if you want to, I've put out a series of articles. If you Google MSU Extension Gould, there's some agrivoltaic articles that have just been released over the last 10 days that hit on some of the topics that Owen is talking about.
Okay, that's great.
I'll
If you
just
could throw
stop there.
that in the chat, that would be really useful
I'll
when people
pull
could
'em up.
find that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, see how
But
innovative we are here in Detroit now that we have
yeah.
our leading university, my alma mater, working with us on agrivoltaics and
Yes.
bringing it all together. Well, we have a few questions to start, so let's get started. Dave, I believe you're first.
Am I here?
Yep, you are.
Okay. I know in my area, if you were to knock on the door and say, "Hey, I'm from any volt, voltaic installation, you'd catch a lot of backlash. And I just wondered if that's true for you as well.
What area are you from, Dave?
I'm in southern Livingston.
Okay, Southern Livingston. In
Boondocks.
Detroit,
It's Boondocks.
I think, and T, you can join me on this, but having been in this work in Detroit for many years now, a large part of our work with our Renewable Energy Committee in Detroit, which goes back 8 years now with the Green Task Force, the very beginning was just myth busting. We just had to spend so much time on education and keeping it in front of people as an option and making sure that we could get solar on churches or get solar in neighborhoods. And so people could actually start to see it and understand it. That's our biggest obstacle in Detroit because even articles, the media, for some strange reason, was picking up stories from some of the naysayers in the neighborhood who wanted to perpetuate those myths of there's going to be heat islands and it's going to overheat our city with these solar panels, or they're going to cause pollution. And so we spent, I don't know, 6 months with city council trying to educate everybody and to bring people along on why there would in fact be health benefits instead of detriments. But the neighbors, like we said, if there were too many naysayers in that neighborhood, it was fine. We don't have to pick your neighborhood. This is not, there's lots of land in Detroit and lots of other neighborhoods. So to be able to clear 40 acres with mostly tires, dead trees, and a few homes goes to speak to how neighbors are actually greatly appreciative of having this focus on their neighborhood with a beautification program and a benefit to the city as well. T, do you want to add anything to that?
No, you spoke very well about that, and I just would say, I empathize with what you're saying, and it's such a remarkable time where we have to, kind of rethink what our cities look like, what our utilities will be. And so there is, in the whole sustainability world, I think the biggest challenge is the kind of the behavioral changes uh, that will need to really face this climate challenge that we're on. And so you're absolutely right. And it's about relationship building, and it's about realizing that cities are going to be different from here on out.
Charles, you work with farmers quite a bit. They're also fairly conservative. How is their reaction to mixing solar with agrivoltaics?
Well, so I thank you, John. Appreciate that lead here. So I lead with agrivoltaics. There are solar companies who do not want to have anything to do with agrivoltaics. But I'm telling you, if we're going to have solar projects in the state of Michigan, we got to lead with agrivoltaics. There's got to be some kind of agricultural component. You cannot just harvest solar energy. You use that solar energy in as many positive ways as you can. I like to think of it as a three-legged stool. So you've got your solar developers, you've got your community, and you've got your farming community. And if those three are communicating, if the community has zoning ordinances that are conducive to the solar developer and the farmer working together, then that's going to lead to some real positive outcomes. And so that's why, and as I mentioned, I'm working with a solar developer in my county, a 1,500 acre site, and in the 2 townships that this particular company is in, there aren't any solar, or there's no zoning ordinances, or they're very little, and so they're leading with agrivoltaics because that's what the community wants to know. And I can tell you that the whole 1,500 acres is prime ag land. I went and looked. We cannot put solar projects on prime ag land and just harvest solar energy. So we got to do something else with that. And that's why we're leading with agrivoltaics.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
And I'll say from experience, we lead with agrivoltaics, and it's created a lot of success in being able to get more projects like in the ground and actually in our pipeline. It's pretty significant. People love to hear that. Because they, at the end of the day, like farmers want to pass on a legacy, right? If they can't do that and they're just giving up the land, not only can they not sometimes stay in their communities because they're getting rid of that ag land, they actually have to leave and go away because they can't like bear to like be in that community anymore because they feel like they betrayed it. And so a lot of farmers really do appreciate the option to be able to continue farming and not feel like they're getting kicked off the land.
Yeah, and the research is so important.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so phenomenal to have Michigan State involved, which is, you know, so trusted to be able to give. Michigan is the second in the nation in crop diversity.
Yes.
And so you've got lots of opportunity to look at what works. We've got urban, we've got our rural land, we've got forest, we've got a lot that we can work with. Janice, did you decide to pass on your question?
It wasn't so much a question. I just wanted to say, I love what you're doing. I can't wait to see it come to fruition. And I guess I do have one question. Has anything been installed yet?
No.
Because I know they're different projects, right? So the first time it's going to be installed will be what, in 25?
The first time you're gonna see stuff structures are gonna be removed beginning of 2025 on site, and then we're gonna be removing vegetation over the course of 2025, and then construction begins end of summer, beginning of fall. So when you start seeing structures and fencing, that's like in something that's gonna be erected on site, that's gonna be really kind of end of summer.
So a year from now.
Yeah, about a
Of
year
this
from now.
story, and I want to help you promote everything. So I've already sent an email, or actually a message, to Diane and Diane.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
We'll get an article for you.
Yeah. I'll be out like in Detroit. I'll say like I'm happy to walk people around and showcase kind of what the site is and happy to do that. This is something we want to be as transparent as possible as a partner for this. So if you guys have any questions or want to see the project, you know, we're happy to kind of, you know, showcase that and be there to kind of do education as well too.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Owen. And Charles, I'm just, you're going to be my new best friend, I can tell. Mike.
He's already my best friend. Don't steal him from me, I promise, okay?
Mike, yeah, but I'm from Michigan.
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
This question is for Charles Gould. I actually have a couple questions. Number one, most of agrivoltaics I see kind of fall into two categories, either sheep or bees. They have some other fruit crops and that stuff, but they're usually somewhat limited in size, 6 or 7 acres. You're talking about 1,500 acres. Are you talking about row crops there? What are some of the challenges around that? Because I know they talk about expanding out beyond sheep and bees, and sometimes it gets a little expensive for the developers, and they balk at that. So I guess if you would make some comments on that topic in general, please.
Yeah, so I think we need to go and define what agrivoltaics is. I think that's really fundamental to our discussion. So in Michigan, we define agrivoltaics is the livestock aspect of it and the crop production aspect. So we're raising food, fiber, and fuel crops, and then we're raising livestock, and that we can. There are some projects that are looking at a certain breed of hog that doesn't root. They're called kuni.
Yeah,
I believe is what they're called.
Yeah.
I'm reserving judgment on that right now, and sheep and livestock or sheep and cattle are the two that we're kind of focused on. Sheep is, we got a perfect situation in Detroit. We have Wolverine packing there. Wolverine packing is not at their maximum capacity for on their kill floor, and so there's room to put more lamb and goat for that matter, through their processing facility there. So when we talk about crop production, the nice thing about growing crops is it can fit the utility scale, and it can fit the community scale. Owen talked about the project, what, in Pennsylvania or whatever, where you're
New York,
raising hay,
yeah.
alfalfa.
New York,
That's
yeah, yeah,
New York, that's a perfect crop.
yeah.
And we need alfalfa here in Michigan. Where there's a market for that. Wheat is something we can grow. Oats is something that we can grow. Soybeans we can grow.
Yeah.
You know, so corn, there's research that is showing that we can grow corn, but I don't think that we're ready yet for corn production. So I think one of the articles that Owen put in the chat box addresses the crop production issue. And I mean, we're only limited by our imagination and the ability that we have to work with the solar developer as to what goes in. You know, the thing that I really am stressing is when I meet, if I'm a farmer and I'm wanting to do this, I'm going to meet with Owen, you know, early on in the planning process. And that's what's so great about this Detroit project is you guys are really ahead of the curve here. You're involving the community, you're getting input, and we can do the same thing with the agricultural community. We can get them early in the planning process and get the resources and design and everything that we need in order to have a successful agrivoltaic project. We don't want failures. There's so many people out here that are watching. We're like under this microscope. We got to be successful here in Michigan.
Is it also a good opportunity for the whole crop rotation and with animals, and so that at the end of 10 years, your soil is in fact better than when you started? And I think in an urban environment, this will be an important aspect as well, with compost and mulch and what we'll be able to do.
Yeah. What I will say about the pricing is that a lot of developers complain because they think Agrivoltaics is really expensive, but I'd rather have, like, I think they want to be able to maximize how much money they're making off a project. I think there is a notion that developers they're not really looking out for the best kind of concern for the community. And I think like Lightstar's kind of motto is that we would rather build better quality projects that are going to, stand the test of time and be there in the community, and people are going to appreciate because it has an agricultural element. Even if it's a slightly more added cost. And for us, we've been able to actually bring down costs over the course of our portfolio because we've been working with suppliers and equipment manufacturers and consultants to be able to get better pricing. So if there's a will, there's a way. And I think a lot of developers don't really have a will to do agrivoltaics. And it's creating a bad stain on the industry because they don't want to do it. And when communities ask, they can't provide it.
See, and that resonates in the farming community because, I've been working, I grew up on a dairy farm. I've been in the ag industry my whole life, been with Michigan State now almost 30 years. When farmers have a problem, they look for ways to solve it. They do their own fabrication most of the time. They are the most resourceful individuals that you can think of. And so when I hear people say, oh, we can't do this, or, solar developers are just, going to ruin the land or whatever. Well, they're not even giving farmers a chance to solve the problem. We give them an opportunity. Owen gives, farmers an opportunity, and the problems that they run into, they're going to come up with solutions to it. That's just who they are. And so we're going to see innovation and creativity, and we're going to find ways that we can cut dollars, and we're going to learn from this. And it's just a fantastic opportunity or experience to be part of.
I agree. Lee, you've had your hand up for a bit.
You have to get off mute, Lee.
There we
Now
go.
it's better, right?
Yep.
Yep.
The creativity that Charles is talking about, I love to say, oh yeah, there's this commodity that it only exists in 1 month a year. And then we have to store it for 11 months before we, as we use it, as an answer to the storage problem with solar and with wind. Of course, farmers have solved that problem with corn and soybeans, since time began, because they're used to variable cash flow. They're used to storing their assets until they can be used. And so we should take advantage of their creativity. But I also caution us as a society that we can't wait on some of our building projects to get solar built at a rate that we need to include it in our utility scheme. And I don't think that I'm going to like mutton well enough to make the sheep industry suddenly flourish. And so I believe that there's
Now, Lee,
certain...
there's a difference between mutton and lamb. Now, let's make
Okay.
sure we understand that.
I knew you knew that, okay? But the illustration is that we do have to find those few things that have to be built into a system so that 10 years from now, when all this creativity has come to bear, then we can take advantage of it. And the reason that I pointed out to Owen that he had wires running across the end of the rows is that that's the fatal mistake that builders are doing right now. If you can't drive through the row and come out the other end, you've got a problem. You'll never be able to convert that site without rewiring it into something that can even harvest biomass. And so every time Charles says crop, he really should say crop or biomass, because our society is going to evolve when we stop taking carbon and hydrogen out of the oil wells. We have to get carbon and hydrogen someplace else to make plastics and to make roads and to make all this stuff. And so we can't look backwards and say the word crops and all of a sudden people think they understand what we're talking about, because there's a whole opportunity out there.
Yeah, I just wanted to show people kind of one of the renderings of the site to kind of showcase what we do and how these sites look. This is a soybean site that we're going to be putting in construction sometime in 2025 in Maryland. You can see, this is a pretty big harvester right there. We have all the cabling underneath, and we're working with the farmer and their equipment to spec out the site to be able to make sure that they're going to be successful on it.
And what, those are too high in portrait, is that correct?
Yep, 2 in portrait, yep.
Yeah, and I tried to propose that to NextEra on a project in my county.
Oh, they don't like that. No,
They don't like it. And
Yeah.
and they didn't say, I want to say, I'm not quoting them, but I believe that the insurance costs for this too high in portrait is much higher than the insurance cost for 1 high. And so those are some of the costs. It's not just how clever we are with the machines and this and that. We have to make sure we don't get caught with a high cost that we really have no control over, the insurance company.
Yeah, we haven't run into that issue. I think we also have fully baked out plans that kind of ensure the agricultural operations can be safe. There is some kind of, people have some wind concerns when it comes to 2 in portrait with like the wind load. Can it handle it? All of our engineers and our engineering team feels confident in 2 in portrait to be able to kind of handle wind loads, and we haven't had any issues with our insurance company to be able to insure these projects.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, but I would say for larger scale companies, they have a certain fixed return, right? Like, when they are building out these utility scale sites, they fixate on this idea. And if there's any added costs that kind of that can kind of reduce that, it kind of plays into them saying, well, it's cost prohibitive, we're not going to do it. But from the very beginning, we're trying to create these solutions at the forefront and then figure out how to kind of make it work. And we have. So.
Oh, and I'm curious, when you interviewed with the city of Detroit and this being selected, because I know there were quite a few applicants, bidders, what were the top things that you felt compelled you with the idea of putting solar in Detroit under this really difficult situation of taking vacant land or creating the land?
Yeah. I think one of the things that I saw, and it's something that when this opportunity came across the Lightstar, I was really excited by the fact that there is no real urban agrivoltaics projects in the country. And there is some examples of urban solar you can find in Milwaukee, in Houston that's going to get built, but there's not really example of urban agrivoltaics, especially with community around those projects. And for me, I come from a city planning background, and my dad's a affordable housing developer. I've grown up kind of in urban environments my entire life. I also understand that like these areas in Detroit have had massive disinvestment, and they've been neglected for a number of years. And I think these projects not only can provide clean energy for the city of Detroit, they can become an example of beauty in a lot of these neighborhoods that have been neglected for decades. And I think this is a real opportunity to increase the agricultural lands in the city of Detroit. I think, Tepfira, her position that she's now passed on to Patrice, their whole office is really committed to being able to help urban farmers. And I've been going to Detroit a number of times now and meeting farmers. There is a demonstrated desire from a number of farmers to get on these sites and do farming at scale. Some of them are doing it as like a side gig. Some of them are doing it on half to a quarter of an acre. Imagine what they could do on 5, 6, 7 acres.
Yeah.
It's transformational. And
Right.
I think from what really convinced me about this project was, I think the city leadership in the meetings, and I was nervous going to the meetings. I was like, are we gonna really convince them? But I do think our whole suite of expertise across our company, not only just agrivoltaics, I think really drew them into kind of how we're able to execute this project, but also trying to find out more solutions and benefits to the surrounding community that could be tangible. And that's really, at the end of the day, I want to have projects that are going to be positive impacts in these communities for the next 20, 30 years, not for something that's going to look good in the first 5.
You got the job. Congratulations. That
Thank
was
you.
great. I'm peeking out my door here to close my garage door. Sorry. It got dark all of a sudden. And
Yeah.
I'm an urban farmer with my chickens and ducks. So
Oh, nice.
here in Detroit. So
But yeah,
Just a quick question. I missed the first few minutes of it. You said your company. What is the name of your company?
Lightstar Renewables.
Okay, thank you.
I'll stop sharing.
no, that was a great image to see. And we just saw an image at our meeting last night. You probably saw it at your meeting earlier this week of what the Houston plan will look like.
Yeah.
And so imagine Houston, where it's 100 degrees, how many days out of the year? And the image they had, it was, and there's going to be 80 acres, or I don't remember the number, but it was quite massive. And it was just a mirror of solar panels in this image. And it was frightening to me to think of, why would you take that much land and just cover it with solar panels in a city that could probably use some shading, some water absorption, some different kind of planning tools than just putting more hard surface, which effectively is what it would be. I think Detroit will be a case study for the country on this, and the state, and for the farms as well, on how you can provide both benefits. And I think as DTE is required to put in so much solar in the coming years, there's where you run into the problem of, if it's just solar, why are we taking all this valuable farmland and converting it over? So there's a lot of tension there that we're trying to help resolve. Any other questions for our speakers?
Yeah, I have a question for Charles.
Okay.
But Charles, isn't there a policy that we are trying to use some of the land that farmers own that's not good for crops to be the site for for solar? I mean, didn't they make a change in the tax act in the state so that, if you can put solar on unproductive land, you'll pay taxes, but then when the solar panels are removed, that property will not be taxed any further, something along those lines?
Are you talking about PA 116?
Yeah, I guess
I
that's
think that's
probably,
what you're talking about. That doesn't have anything to do with the fertility of the soil, but it has to do with farmers who have entered into an agreement that their land would not be used for development.
Conservation district?
No,
So,
no.
no?
So PA 116 was amended, I guess, if you will, and Michigan Department of Agriculture recognized that solar, they approved solar as part of PA 116. So if solar goes on PA 116, there the tax deferral benefit that they get is deferred for the life of the solar project.
right.
But at the end of the solar project, it picks back up again.
But the idea is to encourage farmers to use non-productive land for solar. So, I mean, I know in some cases, you're right, they probably do use productive land, but I think in other cases they're attempting to use non-productive land for it.
Well, so there's a balance there. And this is the conversation I've had with Clyde Taylor, who's on our call here. Clyde is a farmer in Isabella County. And do you tell a farmer, do you dictate what he can do with his land? There's a balance here between zoning and the right of a farmer to do with what he would do or she would do with his land. It's kind of like, I guess I look at it kind of like this, that, when a farmer chooses a crop rotation, nobody questions the fact that he's going from wheat to corn to soybeans or alfalfa or whatever that crop rotation is. Nobody questions that. But there's a whole lot of questioning when a farmer makes a decision to put solar on his land. I can tell you that these guys agonize over that decision. And it's not something that they take lightly. And most of them land on the fact that solar is going to help them keep the farm in the family. And that's the more important thing. It's going to help them be able to be sustainable. So probably what you would want to do then is, look at marginal land, and maybe you put solar on marginal land if that's the direction you're gonna go. That's what I think a lot of people would like to see. But then then it goes back to who's calling the shot here. So John, I don't know if that really answers your question or not.
It does. It does.
It's a very tough issue to deal with. We want to keep agriculture. We got such a strong agriculture industry in Michigan. And if solar goes in on prime ag land, then we don't say, well, we're going to stop farming that. We just find crops that we can grow or whatever, to preserve that it continues in prime ag land. If it goes on marginal land, that's a perfect setting for grazing or, hay production or something like that. You can grow asparagus in solar projects, and we've got a lot of blow sand in Oceana County that's supporting asparagus production. So, we just tailor the agriculture. We lead with agriculture. Let's just leave it at that.
We have a question, and it's Clyde. Clyde, did you want to make a comment?
Clyde, you're on mute.
Clyde?
John Sarver, can you unmute Clyde maybe?
Clyde, do you know?
There
we go. Okay.
I'm having to use my phone tonight. My tablet is
Okay.
pink. I just got in from baling hay at 7:30, so I missed most of the meeting.
Oh,
But I baled hay right up to the silt fence of the Isabella solar project they're building in our neighborhood here, 125 megawatts.
wow.
Tell Charles I am getting pictures.
Awesome.
And I don't know. Like I said, I just got in. Did anybody mention the big project down in Ohio where Ohio State's got 1,900 acres?
Oh,
that they're going to do.
I can talk
portable-
about that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. It's gonna be a massive project. It's Savion's working with Ohio State. They're gonna create like an Agrivoltaics research center basically in Ohio. It's gonna be probably the largest Agrivoltaics specific project probably in the world.
What part of Ohio? know?
It's Madison County.
Where the bridges are. That's,
Yeah.
okay.
It's just west of Columbus, right along I-70. I was at the site yesterday
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
and talked to some people about it. And you're right, it's a very big deal, and it got good people working on it.
Yeah. I know the lead developer for that project. He's a agrivoltaics enthusiast just like me. And he actually taught me as summer internship kind of everything I need to know about agrivoltaics. So it's in good hands, and the research that comes out of that site is going to inform projects around the world. So I'm really excited about that going in.
I'm on their advisory committee, and they got some really cool stuff, but I would just say there is a lot of research out there that we can draw on. So we want this research, but I think we've got enough research that we can pull from here in Michigan that we can still do things and set things up the right way in terms of agrivoltaics.
That's great. Clyde, I heard that you make hay while the sun shines, so I'm glad you came in. And you're still not out there in the dark with making the hay.
Clyde's always in the dark though. That's just the way he rolls.
Mike Lee, another question?
Well, I
Or
was going to
comment?
say to Owen that we had that second picture that you showed that was too high in portrait.
Yeah.
We have a 2.5 megawatt array here in our county that's built like that. And if you ever need to show it to anybody in real life, it's available to have a look at it. We're not very far from Detroit.
Yeah.
About 45 minutes from Detroit Metro. So that's my favorite site, is too high in portrait, 42 feet between the rows.
Beautiful.
But you got to put the fence back far enough that you can turn around at the end.
Yep. You speak my language right there, Lee.
Lee, where is it exactly? Maybe we should make a little field trip.
That would be a fun little field trip. I'm gonna give you in Detroit a
Well,
lot.
actually, about a month ago, I spent 2.5 hours in the car with my state senator viewing the 5 or 7 sites we have in this county
Mhm.
that many of them are built differently. I mean, we have the rigid, too high in portrait that are rigid. We have one high portrait with the wires across the end. We have the too high portrait with the wires buried. You can really see a lot of different construction techniques. And I wish the state would come down and say, everyone has to be able to be drivable, so we don't have to make U-turns with 0-turn mowers.
Yeah.
Hey, who is your state senator?
Joe Bellino, ex-representative in the Energy Committee, who
Oh.
sat on the
Yes, we
community
know
solar
Joe.
bill for
Yes.
years.
So
Yeah, I
you're
know.
down in Monroe area? Is that where
Adrian,
Adrian,
closer to
okay.
Adrian. But
Okay.
Bellino was very interested. He asked a lot of good questions, and I thought it was good use of my time to introduce him to the different designs that are.
Yeah, It's great that he was there. I think he's on the Senate Energy Committee now, right?
Yep.
So that's good that he's learning more. Well, we've hit our time. Just to be respectful for everyone, thank you so much to our speakers, Owen and Tepfira. I just am so excited to be a part of this myself, and I will try and have regular updates for Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association on what we're doing here in Detroit. And I think there's applications statewide for us to be learning, especially as so many of our cities do have a similar situation with vacant land, but also food deserts and energy problems. So it's just a great win-win-win for everybody. John, do you have any GLREA announcements to make before we close?
Well, there's only a couple of announcements. On October, I think it's October 17th, we're having our solar home tour. It will be Thursday night at 7 o'clock. And then tomorrow night in Ann Arbor on Main Street from 5 to 8, it's the Ann Arbor Green Fair. And so GLREA will be at table or station 32, which is on the east side of Main Street between Liberty and Washington. And so if anybody is in the area, would like to stop by and sit and visit, we'd love to see you.
Say the dates again.
Well, the Ann Arbor Green Fair is tomorrow night, Friday night in Ann Arbor. It runs from 5 to 8. And then the solar home tour will be on October, I think it's the 16th.
It's the third Thursday. So
Third
instead
Thursday.
of having a Detroit solar story in October, we're going to have the virtual home tour of, I think, 3 or 4 different homes around the state.
And I think
And
one of them is going to be Diane.
one of them, you'll see the chickens and the ducks. Yeah.
All right.
We'll be featuring a few projects, including my own from Detroit at that time. So thank you all for joining us and for staying involved with GLREA. We hope that maybe this will be a good topic for the annual meeting and we can keep this discussion at the forefront for everyone. So thank you again. And good to meet some of you. And I know we're going to have a lot of exciting news in the future.